And I think that hopefully the main message of the podcast isn't, I certainly don't think it's screaming stop drinking, but the message I want it to scream is look after yourself and look after the people around you, and reach out for help if you need it. I always mention that on the podcast, the help that is theirs. That is the message I want people to get from it, to celebrate this thing, to recognise the drawbacks, but the main thing is to look after yourself and to look after the people around you.
Hello and welcome to We Are Beer People, a podcast all about the many different people who help us enjoy beer. I'm your host, Rob Cadwell, and I reckon if you're listening to this, then there's a good chance that you are one of the beer people too. You might be involved in the world of beer, you may want to find out more about the industry, or perhaps you simply enjoy drinking the stuff. So join me now as I have a chat with one of the beer people. As the train pulled into the terminus, it's proving to be a stubbornly rainy day in Sussex too. Something that hasn't changed since I left Berkshire. And it's one of those days that makes it just that bit harder to be outside and makes the pub an ever more enticing option. Especially as today, I'm in Brighton on the south coast. And much like a map of the night sky, it has these bright clusters of pubs, bars and tap rooms. And these are constellations that mean you're never too far away from somewhere that, come rain or shine, is good for what ails you. And today I'm meeting with Emma Inch, a beer communicator that was voted UK Beer Writer of the Year in 2018 and has a background in radio, DJing, podcasting, writing, judging and mental health. And Emma's recent project is called Same Again, a podcast about beer, pubs and mental health. And it's a deft, informative and supportive look at the interplay between these three elements, told through the experiences of those in the beer world. And we'll talk about this in the podcast, as well as Emma's journey to getting where we are today. And Emma lives in Brighton, where we're spoilt for choice with a number of places we could have visited. But in the end, we chose to duck out of the rain and into the Hole in the Wall, a beautifully welcoming pub tucked away just off the seafront, with an excellent selection of beer and cider on keg and cask from near and far. So let's collapse the brollies, hang up our coats, order a beer, pull up a chair and have a chat with one of the beer people.
I'd like to say, first of all, a very big welcome, Emma. Thank you very much for joining us on the podcast.
No problem.
And you're joining me in the Hole in the Wall pub. I'll start that again.
Yes.
And you're joining me in the Hole in the Wall pub in Brighton.
Yeah.
And it's a very rainy, blustery day. So
It's really blustery, but I mean, this is one of my favourite pubs, and it is one of the perfect little hideaways when it's a bit wet outside. So.
yeah, I think that. I mean, although it's raining, it's another great reason to just pop into a pub and almost be blown into the pub.
Absolutely.
And dry off for a little while.
Absolutely. Once your glasses have unsteamed, it's a very nice place to be.
It is indeed, and as you say, it's slightly off the beaten track, so
Yeah.
you sort of know what you're looking for.
Yeah.
But you might not find it, but when you do, there's a massive tap list of items on cask
Absolutely,
and keg
yeah.
that they're there to enjoy.
Yeah, it's a cracking little pub, and it always has some fantastic beer on, plus London Black, which I love. So
That's very
you
good.
can't choose anything else, so you can have a pint of that.
That's it, yeah, so maybe try one of those a little later on.
Yeah,
It's very good. So I was going to start off things. I like to ask people, why beer and what brought you here?
So, it's kind of hard to... I can't remember a time when I didn't like beer. So it's not like, you hear some people, I don't know, when they were kids and they had a sip of their dad's beer or something and they thought, oh, no, that's not very nice. I can't ever remember a time when that happened. I always drank beer from the first time I could obviously legally go to pubs.
Yeah.
I drank beer and always enjoyed it. We lived next door to a pub when I was growing up, but it wasn't a pub I ever used. But that smell of a pub, I've been thinking a lot about recently. It's always kind of been there, the smell outside a pub. A good pub you can smell from quite a long way away.
Yeah.
And it's kind of that kind of leathery, woody, polishy, damp dog in a good way, kind of. But most of that is last night beer kind of thing, and it's such a lovely smell.
It is.
And my dog, actually, I've got a little whippet, and he, wherever we are, if we walk past a pub, he starts walking up the steps, even if I've never been to that pub before. And I think part of it, he's got such a good sense of smell, and I think it's that smell that perhaps he loves, and the knowing you'll get a warm welcome. So yeah, I think I've never not liked beer, and I can kind of always through my life I can kind of often remember what beer I was drinking, and that always was an interest to me. And on the other side, I was always really interested in writing. So I've always written. I've written fiction and non-fiction and various stuff throughout my life. And then I also was a home brewer as well. So I haven't homebrewed for a long time. I do have a lovely shed with one of those things that isn't a Braumeister, a Grainfather.
Oh yeah,
yeah, Grainfather.
All-in-one.
Yeah, an all-in-one kind of kit thing. So, and I also did my, because I got really into homebrewing, I did my general certificate in brewing from the IBD. So, yeah, beer became sort of like a really big thing, and then a weird route to how I sort of started writing and doing audio about it was I had another career as a frontline mental health social worker, and I had a hobby outside of that, which is always good to do when you've got a stressful job. And I used to DJ. I used to play rockabilly records in pubs and clubs and things. I had a little club night called Frockabilly, and I was so proud of that name when I found it.
That's brilliant.
Which was like a queer rockabilly night. And when my daughter came along, staying up till 3 o'clock in the morning playing records became a bit more difficult. So I started a show on community radio in Brighton on Radio Reverb called Frockabilly Radio Show. And so I was playing rockabilly, and then at the same time beer was sort of becoming real. This is about 10, well, my daughter's now 11, so it's kind of that long ago, and beer was really sort of, particularly in London and down here, beer was becoming really exciting. Lots of new breweries, lots of new beer styles, people, really experimenting with, stuff from the States, the likes of Colonel or Anspach and Hobday, or all of those people, kind of coming to the fore. And I thought, beer, radio, beer, maybe that might work. So I used to do this monthly show on community radio about beer. And then, everything sort of fell together, really. That makes it sound a bit easier than it was. But I did start writing about beer. That's how it happened, yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel like you're sort of drawn to it in that sense? So it was always that thing pulling you in that direction?
It was always something I loved. I'd never thought about writing about it particularly, although I had written about pubs to an extent, because I'd written about LGBT pubs. Beer itself, I hadn't really thought about writing about, but it just made absolute sense because it's something that's always been a massive love of mine. It's always been something that I've been interested in, that I've, I remember when I met my partner 15 years ago, she's one of those people who walks into a pub and kind of says, what should I have? And it could be anything, you might have a spirit or a wine or a cider or a beer, and I don't understand that sort of person. It will always be a beer. It will always be a beer.
Yeah, it has to be.
So I think, it all just made sense after a while, I suppose, yeah.
Yeah, and was it like a linear thing of getting into homebrew or getting into beer writing or things like that, or do you find like they were all sort of happening in amongst each other?
I guess, I started homebrewing as a student, so a long, long time ago, when, you used to buy kits from Boots, and it was really hard to get any information about brewing from scratch. It was really hard to get any ingredients. So mostly I just did kits from Boots, and some of them to disastrous effects, awful. A load of bottles exploding in my wardrobe in halls at university, and had this jacket.
Always quite hard to explain at that point, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
What's happened in your wardrobe. Yeah.
And this jacket that then smelled of old beer for the whole term because I didn't know how to clean it. So I've always liked that, and then that stopped for a while, and it wasn't until until probably my daughter came along, that I started homebrewing again and realising, wow, the world is quite different in terms of homebrewing now. You know, it's
really moved on, hasn't it?
Really moved on.
Where homebrewing used to be about how can I make beer at home cheaply, or alcohol at home cheaply, to actually how can I recreate my favourite beers, or
and make something that's lovely.
That sort of
I know.
Yeah.
And I know you're a member of a homebrew group.
I am, yeah.
And I joined the Brighton one. At that time, there were some fantastic homebrewers in there. James Tor and Jack, who's now the owner. He's now got his own brewery, Hand, out in Worthing, and a couple of other people. Just amazing homebrewers making this stuff that I couldn't believe people were just making in this kind of very Heath Robinson kind of way, with how they'd rigged up fridges to do stuff. So got really into that, and this was before I was writing about it, really. Just seeing how that worked. So I think things just all sort of, it wasn't so much linear as it had always been there.
Coalesced.
And then it coalesced. That's a good word. It coalesced.
Very good. And so you started off with radio, I guess, and talking about beer.
Yeah.
What kind of things were you talking about on your show?
What did I used to... So, I mean, the biggest mistake I made was that I used to do it live. So it was a live show on FM radio. So regulated by Ofcom, so no swearing, no kind of lots of the whole list of things that weren't acceptable.
It's the beauty of a podcast.
One of the things obviously was you can't, not promoting drunkenness as a healthy way to be kind of thing, or a desirable thing, absolutely. And set myself up a little bit there, particularly as I was often inviting brewers who I'd never met, perhaps, to come into the studio and share a beer. And often, obviously, they'd bring their most lovely barrel-aged 10% something or other. So we'd be sat there, I'd be sort of operating the desk and, trying to think of intelligent questions. James Tor actually was a regular on there, talking about homebrewing. So he had sort of a homebrew kind of section. Then we'd try and get a live guest as well, and that might be a brewer, or sometimes it was, so Jane Payton, who's a beer writer who now lives down here, she was on it quite a few times, and then I'd have some recorded segments, because this would be kind of 2015, 16, 17, something like that. And I think we used to get a lot more sort of the tap takeovers that you got. People would actually come down, there'd be a lot more Meet the Brewers. So there was always somebody coming, whether it was Northern Monk or Four Pure or whoever it was coming. So I'd grab some interviews from out as well. So we'd have some recorded features. And just filled an hour, and then did a lot of tasting as well. We maybe did some food and beer matching or that kind of stuff. But I don't know why I did it live, and I nearly gave myself a heart attack a number of times.
Pile on the pressure.
So I wouldn't suggest that, but it was good fun. It was really good fun, and that's how it started, and then became a podcast after that, and it morphed quite a bit into a different thing.
But a great way to cut your teeth, and if you're doing it live, you can then move on to pre-record.
Definitely,
quite nicely, I think.
Yes, definitely. I think you do really cut your teeth doing live radio. Yeah.
Would you go back to live at all in any way, or?
I think live radio is really it's quicker than making a podcast, because that's the hour. You've made it in the hour. Bish bash bosh. Yep. Nothing you can do about it. Whereas you can spend literally days making an hour of audio, as you know. So that's really good. I think also there's like I remember when I used to do the Rockabilly show. I remember meeting somebody once who said, I've listened to your Rockabilly show. You're on every week, aren't you? I've listened to that. And I said, thank you for listening, glad you enjoy it. And she said, no, I didn't say I enjoyed it, but there is a certain urgency about it. And I think that is with live radio, there is this real urgency. You cannot leave a long silence.
Dead air.
Because otherwise people think their car radio's broken or something, and the long silence sounds forever. So you kind of have to fill it. So some of that is quite fun. It's quite fun. I think it's more fun when you're dealing with music than when you're dealing with trying to, having a lot of live guests and doing things in maybe a way that isn't as planned. It's more fun with music. But live radio, I think it's fun. It is fun. Yeah, there's nothing quite like it.
No, you're sort of definitely riding at the front at that point, aren't you?
Absolutely by the seat of your pants. Yeah. Quite often then you kind of skid into, the theme tune at the end and breathe a massive sigh of relief.
Have a nice drink. After that,
yeah.
Were there any skills that you needed to learn or pick up as you were sort of going into that?
Well, I suppose I was really lucky with working at Radio Reverb. There's the people who were involved in that at the time and still now. Actually, lots of people who work in audio all the time. So maybe they work for the BBC or work for other audio production kind of companies. So I learned so much and was taught so much, and operating sort of a studio mixing desk made operating any other podcasting equipment really easy, because I kind of knew what was
it's the same
what it was, and editing software and all that. They sort of showed me all of that. So that was really good. It was a steep learning curve. But I kind of learned all of that with the music show. So I'd got my head around that, and I was able to ask advice on what to buy, for microphones and portable devices and stuff like that. So I was really lucky. And I think I'm a big believer in learning. I really like learning, and I think there's always room to do it. So. I read a lot about podcasting, like the practicalities as well as the sort of theory around podcasting or audio. And I do a lot of online, if there's an online event, there's quite a few sort of online sort of podcasting events, or what's that thing? The Makers Festival as part of the London Podcast Festival. That's really good. So I'll go up to there, and I think there's always room to learn little snippets. I've taken myself on a 3-day editing course, sound production course that was really interesting, creative sound production, and all of that I think is really interesting. I mean, as I say, I'm a big believer in education, a big believer in never stopping learning. There's always something else. So it's a work in progress, I think.
Oh, definitely, I love that, and I think it always comes across when I'm listening to your work how well kind of polished and produced it is.
Oh, thank you.
And you do always get the full spectrum of podcasts, from kind of rough and ready, run and gun kind of stuff, which works for some things.
Absolutely,
but that was one of the questions I had, was the different roles that audio, video and writing as different mediums for talking about beer have, and how we kind of tell those stories, but also how we receive and listen to them as well.
I mean, so I've worked in all of those, not so much in video, but I have done some video work. I love writing. That is my first love, and I think reading a piece of good writing is something that lifts my heart. I try and read something every day, not necessarily about beer, but try and read something every day that is going to move me or inspire me. So that's my first love. I think it's brilliant at telling stories, but I think we live in a world where we receive information in so many different ways now. And my second love is definitely audio, and I think audio has this intimacy, particularly podcasts, not so much radio. Radio, we tend, and you can see it from the listening figures, that radio we tend to listen to with other people. So we tend to listen to, people listen to it at work, they have it on at work, or they have it on in the kitchen at home, or in the car when you're going on a journey or something, and often you're with other people. Whereas podcasts, listening figures show that people tend to listen to them on their own, and often listen to them on earbuds as well. So something that's kind of right inside their body, sort of thing. And I think that plus the the way that a podcast can talk about such a niche topic. Weirdly, some people think beer is niche. I don't. But that people can talk about such a niche topic in your actual head. That can be very intimate and build up a lot of trust between you and the person who you're talking to, or who's talking to you. And that ability, the best audio, I think, has the ability to make you feel like you're the one that's being talked to. Like the thing that turns me off immediately is if people say stuff like everybody listening, or all of you out there. I'm thinking, well, there's only me. There's me. Well, you're not talking to me then. You're talking to everybody else. Whereas a really good broadcaster or podcaster, for me anyway, that's what I prefer, says just talks to you. Just talk to that one person, and that, I think, that can build a real intimacy and trust that is really powerful and really good for telling stories. And if you listen to something like, I don't know, This American Life or The Moth or something like that just create these stories that you can be utterly absorbed in. So you can be crying one minute and laughing the next minute, and I think that's really, really powerful. So video obviously can tell really, really good stories. You can actually see what people are talking about there and then. But Alistair Cook, who's a legendary broadcaster, who used to produce Letter from America, he talks about, the best pictures are often radio has the best pictures, so the best pictures are often created in our minds. So unless I really need to see something, then I can probably think about it in my mind, kind of thing. But I do love video. I love well-made video. I think there's a lot of YouTube content that doesn't interest me. I think it interests a lot of other people. They get really good listening figures. But I love, really well-constructed, well-made video, like some of the feature-length things that Craft Beer Channel have done. I think are amazing.
Yeah.
Really tell a fantastic story. And bring things to life. I think in terms of consuming that, lots of people will watch it on their phone or watch it while they're hanging around at home. But with video, you've got to actually stop to watch it. Whereas with audio, you don't have to stop. With video and writing, you've got to stop. Don't read things while you're driving, kids. But I think with audio, it can enter lots of different parts of your life. Your commute, you're going to the gym, for those people who do that sort of thing, walking about, doing the housework, all those kind of things. You can listen to audio and you can consume audio in a way that you can't other media.
Yeah, definitely. There's that thing for sure that they can lean on people's imagination, as you say, to really help build that picture.
Yeah.
Because what you can do, and have a little bit more bandwidth to play with in audio, because you've got sound, rhythm, time, background music,
exactly,
anything like that, really. Whereas writing, I think you've got to be so succinct, and every word, every comma has to play its part, doesn't it?
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think they're very linked. For me, they're even more linked over the years. I always, with my writing, use the function on Word, I forgot what it's called, review, and then speak out loud or something, and it reads it back to me, and I always use that for every single thing that I write. It's a bit of a funny robotic voice, but it gives you some of the rhythms, and it gives you some of the it lets you know if you made a mistake, that you can't notice you missed out a word, or you've spelt something wrong, in terms of, oh, that isn't the word I meant.
It's always really hard to proof check, isn't it, when you read, because your brain corrects it.
Absolutely. So I think it's really, but I just like hearing it back and hearing what that would sound like if somebody was reading it, because I think I'm one of those people who's got one of those monologues in their heads. I don't think everybody has. I don't know. So it really helps if I'm reading something. I'm sort of hearing the words as well. So, I think they are really intimately connected. Yeah.
Absolutely. And we talked about writing there. What was your sort of first writing gig or route into writing?
So I remember writing a review of a Billy Bragg album for the university newspaper. As you can see, I'm wearing a Billy Bragg T-shirt now.
Very on brand.
I have never lost my love for Billy Bragg. And he's one of those few heroes, I think, that it would be okay to meet. So I remember I did that, and my payment was the album, the album that I can't remember. I'm trying to think which album it would have been. It's the one with sexuality on it. no, I've forgotten what it's called. Anyway, and then my first paid gig was for Diva. This was in the mid-90s. Diva magazine for a lesbian, and it was a piece. Made my mum so proud. It was a piece about public sex. So it was kind of inspired by the whole kind of cruising grounds, and there's a big area of Brighton that there isn't any. I think it's now all the bushes have been cut back, but the bushes in Brighton down by Duke's Mound used to be where lads would go down and have sex with strangers in the dark, kind of thing. And my question was, do lesbians engage in any of this? The kind of sauna culture and the anonymous sex culture. So it was around that. So yeah, I was really proud of that piece. So that was my first kind of paid piece, and then I very much switched to fiction, and I wrote 2 full-length novels that never had any real success. But I used to do short stories and stuff like that and get things in places. And then in terms of beer, I can't even remember what my first beer gig was. I don't know.
It's a gradual journey into it.
Yeah. It suddenly sort of became, oh, you're going to pay me for that. That's nice.
So, that's fair enough. Was it something that you kind of set out to do, or people would approach you to do writing, or you'd knocking at the doors going, can I write for you, or can I write this idea?
I think I was really lucky because I had the radio show and then the podcast, and very early I won an award for the radio show. I got Best Online Beer Communicator, I think, and that must have been in 2016, maybe, something like that. And so I kind of became a bit known, so people started to ask little things. At this time I was still full-time teaching social work, so I didn't have bags of time to kind of do stuff. But so I started to sort of get known, I suppose, fairly early. And then once I made the decision to really do a lot of stuff, which was probably just before that, it was probably about 10 years ago. Yeah. I did approach a lot of people, and as I say, I was quite lucky because I had the podcast people knew of me, or I'd already interviewed them before, or something like that. I'm not saying my name was really well known. It's just that I had more contacts than starting from scratch. I had people who I knew I could get hold of, and now it's still a mixture of the two, really. It's sometimes pitching ideas, and sometimes people approach me, so it's a mixture, really.
Fair enough. And what do you spend most of your time doing at the moment?
At this very moment, since Christmas, I've been working on a project that I have wanted to do for a long time. So writing at the moment. It's not something that I have anywhere to place it at the moment, but that's all a plan.
Work in progress.
Yes,
okay.
Yeah.
That's fair enough.
So it's a project I've been wanting to do for a long time. So that is what I'm doing at the moment. But interspersed with organising the new series of Same Again podcasts. So interspersed with that, and then doing little bits like mentoring. I've done some judging fairly recently. I've done, and then I'm going to present I'm going to be like the sort of MC or host of this historical beer conference.
I saw that. That's one in August.
That's right. Yeah, in August. Yeah. So thinking about things around that. So lots of different little bits and pieces.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
How do you sort of manage your time when you've got all of those competing interests and things that might be more pet projects versus things that
it's really hard,
might be longer term.
And at different, for the past few years, the project that I've really wanted to do has had to take a massive back seat, and it's not, I've been really annoyed about that, but that has had to happen. So I've had to make a conscious decision to not pitch for work at the moment while I at least get somewhere with this project. And things like the Same Again, that was something that I started myself, and I just it's about carving out time. I think I'm quite good at that. I'm quite organised. I have like the kind of app for all my tasks, and I have a zero policy on my inbox. Zero.
What's
emails.
that like? I've never achieved that myself.
But otherwise things get overwhelming.
I'm a read all my emails person. Mark them read, but there's just tens of thousands of them in my inbox. And all that.
See, that would make me anxious.
Yeah, but I'm not as bad as the people where you sort of do it and it has like 40,000.
I know, 40,000 unread. Yeah, I know.
I don't know how you even use your phone at this point.
No, I don't know. I don't know. So I have to try and be organised. I think sometimes there's that phrase, need something doing, then ask a busy person. So I still work 2 days a week teaching. Well, not direct teaching a lot of the time, but I'm 2 days a week at university. I have a child, I have other things that go on. I've got a dog, I've got a family, there's things that... There's always a lot to juggle, but I think sometimes, you do get more done like that. If I kind of wake up, I don't know what I'm going to do today, then I don't really get anything done.
You've always got a to-do list that's longer than your time
absolutely,
available to you.
Yeah. And in some ways that's healthy, isn't it? Don't know.
I hope you're enjoying our chat, and if you like what you're hearing, there are a few things you can do that really help us out and help other people find the podcast. Follow or subscribe to We Are Beer People wherever you get your podcasts and leave a review or rating. Or share the episode on your socials or even in actual real life. And if you want to stay up to date with all things We Are Beer People, you can visit our website at wearebeerpeople.co.uk, where you can sign up for a monthly newsletter. And you can follow us on social media at We Are Beer People. And if you have any questions or comments or want to hear from any beer people, then pop me a message. Now, back to the podcast.
Obviously, you mentioned teaching. Do you find that's in any way kind of helped your work as a communicator?
Yeah, I think there is a lot of overlaps. I think although people sometimes think I'm quite shy because I'm quite awkward. I'm not an extrovert normally. I don't. I'm not sort of the life and soul of the party normally.
Welcome to the introvert.
Yeah. Well, good.
Yeah.
I think it's a good place to be.
Yeah.
But I'm quite happy to be on the outskirts of things. I've been accused of being an awkward lurker at beer events stuff because I'm just quite happy with my beer and my little notebook and kind of sitting there taking it all in. It doesn't bother me. I'm not feeling awkward and I'm not feeling like I want to talk to somebody or something. In fact, I get really peopled out at times. So because people sometimes think I'm quite introverted, then they don't imagine that I'd be any good speaking in front of people because that's something I do all the time. It absolutely doesn't bother me speaking in front of lots of people, and the skills that I have to use to teach are very similar to skills that when you want to get a point across. So that's all, that all fits in. And equally the other way, the skills that I developed through my writing career have really helped me work with students who are perhaps struggling with a dissertation or how to get their ideas down, how to edit things, it's really, the two things do overlap to an extent.
You've definitely been there then, of trying to get everything onto paper or recorded and edited down,
So I think the two help me, whether my students or people I work with would say the same, I don't know, but I think they do. I definitely see overlaps, Yeah,
absolutely. Do you have any advice to someone who would be looking to get into being a beer communicator?
I think just do it. I think don't wait for somebody to employ you to do something that you think is really interesting, because you're going to have a unique voice wherever you're coming from. I guess that's the other thing. Don't try and be somebody else. Don't try and be I don't know, Pete Brown or Matt Curtis or whoever your kind of writing heroes are. Just be yourself, tell your own story, because that's always going to be the most interesting. I think don't expect to earn any money. It's a bit of sobering advice, but
Cries into beer.
Yeah. It's not a money maker. But yeah, and enjoy it. Yeah, I think that really. I think also everybody's got imposter syndrome, so it's not as easy as to say just ignore it, because you can't, because it's there all the time. But that's really hard. I think for women as well, particularly, that can be really tough. That imposter syndrome, and it's not even like imposter syndrome makes it sound like it's something that you're thinking is wrong in some way, and it's not that, because throughout my writing career there's been often times where I've thought, oh, you wouldn't say that if I was a man, or you wouldn't do that, or why are you saying that, or you've witnessed other women getting stick for their writing or whatever from men. So yeah, it's not necessarily a syndrome that's in you, but I suppose if you're a woman, I think reach out to other women as well. There's lots of networks, there's lots of women who are very supportive, there's lots of mentorship schemes. Actually, there's a mentorship scheme in the British Guild of Beer Writers, so that's a really good thing to get involved with, to join the guild maybe as an associate member and to get on the mentorship scheme. And there's also a Women in Beer mentorship scheme, particularly for women. So things like that I think are really good to kind of and also just try and meet people. But telling your own story, having your own voice, I think is really important, because it will always be different to anybody else's, and having the courage to speak from where you come from is, I think, really, really important.
Yeah, no one else can do what you say. What
no one else can do that. No one else can do that. But trying to copy or emulate somebody else's work it's a hiding to nothing, really, because you might be really good, and that's great, but are you really telling the story that you want to?
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned the illustriously named British Guild of Beer Writers as well. You were previously Beer Writer of the Year, and you're a former chair of the British Guild as well. Can you tell us a little bit about what that does and how you're involved in that?
Yeah. So I got involved in the British Guild of Beer Writers quite early, through Jane Payton, actually, when I was doing the radio show, and she came on and was really supportive. She's been supportive throughout my career, actually. In fact, I'm seeing her in a bit. We're still very good friends. She lives in Brighton, and so she suggested joining the guild for things like training opportunities and contacts and the awards that they do every year. So on her advice, I joined, and so the guild is a group of writers, and that's communicators, actually. Writers, it needs to be a bit wider than that nowadays. It's a group of beer communicators, and that can be from one person sitting at home making a podcast that they just do for the weekend, at the weekends, or somebody writing an occasional beer blog, to somebody who's writing books about beer and making a living through that, to somebody who works for a big multinational company who's working in comms or marketing, who spends much of their day communicating about beer. It's for kind of all those people. And there's also some corporate partners as well. Some of the bigger breweries are corporate partners and beer organisations. And they provide training, they do events, they have awards every year, and I believe the prize money for the British Guild of Beer Writers Awards is the biggest food and drink prize money in the biggest prize money in any food and drink awards, I believe. It's pretty good money if you win a prize in that. There's lots of stuff, lots of contacts you can make through that. Daily newsletter that gives you often press releases from all the different breweries, which is sometimes just enough to kind of spark an idea for a story, or to follow up that brewery that's done the press release and find out what's going on, or it might contribute to something else. I get lots from that, actually, in terms of, particularly for the podcasts I've been doing recently. Anyone who does a press release that mentions mental health in any way, I'll be like, perhaps contacting them to try and get an interview with somebody to talk about that. So it's good. It's a really good organisation. You can join as an associate. So I can't remember all the details, but there's 2 levels of membership, associate and full membership. And associate, you don't need to have had huge kind of experience or lots of things published or anything like that. You can kind of join and then work up to being a full member. I would advise anyone communicating about beer to join it. It's I've got a lot out of it, subsidised training, some really fun events, visits to different places. Yes, it's really
absolutely.
Good. Yeah.
I mean, you say sort of beer's a niche topic, but if it's got the top prize fund in food, then I think that's a different story.
I'm pretty sure it's definitely in drink. I'm sure. I mean, don't come back on me and say it hasn't, but it's got pretty high prize pot for the prizes that it gives.
I always think that the guild sounds obviously quite like a large imposing thing, but really it's a network of people who can help you, who you can speak with, and there's all those sort of training and opportunities that come through it as well.
Absolutely, it's a network, and the board is made up of beer communicators and writers. It's a voluntary position to be on the board, and so some of those will be freelancers, some of those will work for organisations. But it's designed to help everybody. It's supposed to be fun.
Fantastic, It's beer at the end of the day, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
And I wonder then if we can talk about your sort of most recent podcast, which was Same Again. That's about beer, pubs and mental health. And for me personally, that kind of struck a chord, because it was certainly something I was going through at the time, and I basically had a period of burnout. I think it's the kind of word to go around it. But for me, beer and the community around beer was a bit of a North Star where you could sort of go towards it. But I think the thing that you told really well and conveyed in a fantastic way on your podcast was, in a way, the sort of double-edged sword of beer, pubs, drinking and mental health. You can have that community, conviviality and the connection with people around you, but you're also drinking alcohol, which might be a substance that you could be addicted to, or it might be distracting you from other areas of your life. And I think you explored that really well with lots of different people. How did that idea come about then to talk about mental health?
Again, it's one of those things that's kind of a lifelong thing. I've worked in mental health for a very long time, so 25 years plus. Worked in all different parts of mental health before I started beer writing. So worked in residential care, worked briefly with older people, I've worked with homeless people, and for the last 10 years of my career, I was my practice career as a frontline a mental health social worker. And I also had responsibility. I was what's called an approved mental health professional, which are people who are responsible for coordinating and admitting people under the Mental Health Act, so what people call sectioning. And as I say, now I teach mental health social work as well. So it's an area that's always been interesting for me. And I think at times I've thought, how does that sit with my other career? And maybe when I tell students sometimes about what I do in the other part of my life, I sometimes think, does this fit? I'm not sure that this fits. But I think the way I was talking about, maybe the writing kind of overlaps sometimes. I think sometimes it does overlap in terms of, community and connection, like you were saying. And but what I'd seen, particularly since COVID, was more and more people informally saying stuff on social media, or maybe formally writing stuff or recording stuff about their own mental health issues. And sometimes people on Twitter reaching out quite late at night, I'm feeling like rubbish, guys, can somebody help, sort of thing. And just seeing more of that in the industry, and seeing this kind of, and also looking at how we talk about alcohol and how we deal with alcohol as an industry, in terms of both writing and producing and selling beer, but also as consumers as well. Those two sides to it, of, like you very well put, kind of the supportive nature that going for a pint with your mate can be, but also the bit that we don't talk about so much of the how alcohol can impact on your mental health quite badly, or at least allow you to avoid looking at what you need to be doing around your mental health. And I don't think we address that well enough. So I thought, how can I bring those two things together, bring those two sides of my career, but also those really important discussions together? Because then the other bit of it is also, pubs not only provide a place where we might go if we're lonely, or we might sit at the bar with our friend and talk about stuff, but they also raise huge amounts of money and do a lot of, and breweries, do a lot of really good work in the direct work in the communities, or fund direct work in communities. So there's all that as well. And I kind of thought, trying to capture all of that really. And
that hyper-local thing as well, as, providing food for people, and, just someone to speak with.
Exactly. And, providing something that doesn't exist in any other part of the community. A cafe is not a pub. You don't own that bit of the cafe for the day when you're there. You're just in, you have your food or drink, and then you go. With a pub, it's it's your space. It's a public house. It's somewhere that's that can be a neutral ground. It's not your friends. It's not yours. It's it can be somewhere where it's okay to talk to the public, it's to other people. That would be a bit strange in a cafe sometimes. And they're such amazing places that do such good work, but then also there's a whole other side of not acknowledging the role of alcohol in some people's lives, particularly in the industry, was something that I was interested in. And I suppose I think about that quite a bit, again, in terms of women and in terms of being a parent as well. What sort of happens to women who work in beer when they have a child or something, and they're not able to do all the after work schmoozing that needs to be done sometimes in terms of beer sales, for example, or being a brewer, sort of selling your beer places. How does and drinking, drinking is kind of part of working in beer, and I just kind of wonder whether we really talk about that enough, about the impact that has, and of course at the moment there's a big rise in people choosing alcohol-free options as well, and I've done quite a bit of work around alcohol-free. It's something I'm really interested in. I drink alcohol-free beer quite often. So it just felt, I suppose, where the podcast came from was all of that, really, trying to capture that somehow.
Bring that all together. But again, it was bringing in different voices as well to tell your story. So you did speak to, what's the alcohol-free club?
Club Soda. Club Soda.
Like Club Soda as well, and John Robbins from Moon Under Pod.
That's right.
About his story as well. Again, he had a very kind of dual-edged kind of approach to it as well, didn't he?
Absolutely, because he's a massive lover of pubs. But has also talked very openly about his struggles with alcohol, and it's that kind of balance, I think, that it's. I mean, his episode was so moving. Actually, his story was so moving.
He's also so eloquent as well, and able to put across what he wants to say.
He is incredible to listen to, and talks amazingly about all of that, and really powerfully. And I think that is stuff that I think we need to start engaging with as a not only people working in beer or around beer, but as a society as well.
I think so. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a kind of advice product, isn't it? It just comes with checks and balances. It needs to.
And I think what was really interesting as well, and what's the other bit I wanted to kind of bring out, was it's definitely not a podcast that's about give up alcohol or stop drinking or only go to the pub and drink alcohol free. It's certainly not that, because there is this other bit as well that's about beer itself. The conviviality around beer. Jane Payton actually is the one who talks a lot about it's the most convivial drink, because it's I'm drinking a 4-point-something% cask ale at the moment. I can drink that for, drink a couple of those. I'm not going to be drunk like I would be if I had 2 double whiskies, in half an hour or whatever, or a couple of large glasses of red wine. It's not the same. It's a slower kind of. Obviously, I think there's some 11% or something beers maybe on that beer list, but
we have the choice though.
We have the choice, yeah. But I think there's something around beer itself that it's been brewed for 10,000 years or however long. It's brewed in all different areas of the globe. There's something about it. There's even talk that human beings settle down into communities because of beer, because of needing to grow crops for beer, not because of needing to grow crops for bread. So there's something that's so very powerfully linked to human existence that I think it can have this way of bringing us together, of allowing us to talk and be around each other. And the power, I was just reading something the other day of this thing someone was talking about somewhere in mainland Europe, Germany, I think, where in an older people's community they've started home brewing in the basement of this older people's community, and talking about how that's bringing people together. And there's something about beer that I think is different to other drinks. So the podcast certainly isn't about don't drink beer or don't drink alcohol. There's something amazing and magical that sometimes.
I think it goes to show it's the depth of, like you say, our relationship with beer. Where beer at one point was safer to drink than water.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of people, were drinking it. The whole story about when they were able to identify plague's transmission because brewers and people around breweries weren't getting the plague, they weren't drinking the water, and all of that. Your podcast kind of goes on to show the depth of beer and the complex relationship that we have with it. It is good. It's there for everyone. But it does come with some caveats, baggage.
And I think that hopefully the main message of the podcast isn't, I certainly don't think it's screaming stop drinking, but the message I want it to scream is look after yourself and look after the people around you. And reach out for help if you need it. And there's lots of help on there.
Help there.
There's I always mention that on the podcast, the help that is there. So that is the message I want people to get from it. To celebrate this thing, to recognise the drawbacks, but the main thing is to look after yourself and to look after the people around you, because we all know what happens when we don't.
Absolutely, and I think probably the pandemic brought that more into relief than it had been before.
Definitely.
So have we got more of that to look forward to?
So definitely, So I'm just starting work on the second series. Got some really interesting people lined up, hopefully. Some really interesting topics to talk about. We went through a lot on the last series, but I think some of it, there's so many stories out there and so many different angles to take, and it's something that a lot of people are talking about. And I went to the show last week in London, Choir of Man. I don't know if you've
heard of it. Yeah.
So it's sort of set in a pub with this sort of ostensibly kind of a pub choir kind of thing, but lots of the issues that came, it was all male cast. It's about sort of men's relationship with each other and with pubs, and a lot of what was talked about in that was around mental health and looking at those sort of topics. I think are becoming more talked about. People are recognising there's a need to discuss this kind of stuff, and that the pub plays quite an important role in
like
that.
A safe space, isn't it? To talk about that with people that you meet there.
Absolutely.
I wanted to talk about, there's a tweet I saw, so forgive me whilst I look it up, but just to get the wording right. This tweet, which I'll just read out, it got 1.1 million impressions. It was from earlier this week, and it's from a London journalist called Marie Leconte. I don't know if you saw it at all.
Oh, I think I did. There was some discussion about this, wasn't there? Yeah.
So the tweet says, "What I fear Gen Z will never understand if they don't drink is that there's a level of inner peace you can only gain after having had a long, frustrating day of work followed by precisely 3 drinks with friends. It's a form of Zen only otherwise reached through firm religion." Obviously that was on X and then got shared massively, quote-tweeted massively. But I think that's, in a nub, kind of what the thing is. 3 pints is a good place to be sometimes to chat with them. But there were a lot of people saying, well, firstly, why are you making this a Gen Z thing? But also, the depth of it, and that other people don't have that experience always, and sometimes you can't drink that or go drink more than that, or don't have that same experience. But it was just amazing the traction that got.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I did see some of that last night, and I think, I mean, Twitter. I refuse to call it X.
I know.
Twitter has this thing. Anybody will put something on there, and there's always someone who goes, "Well, that's not my exact experience." It's like, well, it wasn't applying to you. So there's that level of. I thought it was interesting. I thought it was funny.
Yeah.
I think it was meant to be funny. I think there's something that I probably would like to go for a drink with that journalist.
Absolutely.
Because it sounds like that sounds like a really nice approach. And there was some sort of acknowledgement of after 3 pints we can start getting messy or whatever.
Yeah.
But for some people that they can't do that, that's fair enough. And for some people they choose not to do that. And I think government guidelines would probably say if we did drink 3 pints a week every day after a stressful day, we'd be over the government guidelines, I think. So there's a lot there,
To unpick if you want to.
Well, there is, if you want to, And then I'm kind of thinking, but it's not really we don't really have to unpick that tweet. It was like a really nice, it was a funny thing.
Yeah, it's very relatable.
And it was just like, oh, thank God, sometimes that is a really nice way of unwinding. Sometimes it might not be the healthiest. Maybe for some people that's going for a run. That's never going to be my way of unwinding. But I can see why for some people that's healthier and more, more adjusted, I suppose. But for me, I like a couple of pints.
I think so.
Not every day.
No.
Not every day. And I do have that moment straight after work, especially working at home. So much that I, when it gets to kind of 6 o'clock or something and I've stopped writing for the day, I often will want, I just want a beer now. And often I have to think, do I really want a beer? And so that's when I'll use alcohol-free beer, actually.
Totally agree. It's that sort of scene change, isn't it?
The scene changes thing, And I think a lot of people struggle with that. But the problem is if I start drinking beer at 5 o'clock, then, it's not good for me to do that every night. It's not. I know, personally, for me, it's not good for me to do that.
Especially when it's professionally there, you have as much beer as you could possibly want.
Absolutely. I'm very lucky that I do. And so, for me, having that kind of stop, having an alcohol-free beer, and then I can decide. And then after I've had that, I'll quite often think, I don't really want a beer now. I don't really want alcohol. I'll just make my dinner, and I've gone past it. But I think it's about allowing ourselves to recognise those things, and but also knowing that right on Friday I'm going to have this for my dinner, and I know that I want this beer with it, and that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, as part of the meal. It's point, you've really thought about it. But there is sometimes nothing nicer than falling into a pub and just breathing. A nice sigh, and then a clarity as well that might appear after a while.
Exactly. And I'm not going to say one way or the other, really, but I didn't feel the need to. I liked the tweet before I'd seen the controversy about it. I'd pressed like because I followed that journalist, and so I just pressed like and didn't think of it until hours later.
And you sort of blown up a bit.
Completely blown up, and I thought, oh my God.
Yeah, are there any other kind of projects and things that you've got coming up?
So I am going to chair or MC the historical beer conference in Manchester in August, which I'm really looking forward to. That's organised by Steve from Beer Nouveau and a couple of other people. We've got some great speakers there. That should be a really, really interesting couple of days.
It's the first year they've done it, and sort of starting from scratch.
They've been talking about it for a long time. Many years ago, I had the first conversation with Steve. Many years ago, way before the pandemic. So he's been thinking about this for a long, long time. Very knowledgeable guy. People he's got involved are very, very knowledgeable. I think it'd be really, really interesting. And so that's to look forward to. Obviously, the next series of Same Again, which will be out in the next few months. And I've got little projects of my own that I'm working on.
Now on to probably an exciting beer culture part of this. So we're obviously sat in the hole in the wall.
Mm-hmm. It's getting busier and busier.
It is indeed. It's filling up. Could you tell us what your sort of favourite place to enjoy a beer is?
Well, I'm going to say the hole in the wall, aren't I? Now, this is one of my favourite pubs in Brighton at the moment. As with any,
you're really lucky. We've got a lot of choice of really great places to drop in.
We really have. And as with any city, things close, then things open, and this is fairly new. Only been here a couple.
2021.
Yeah, not very long. So I although Jim, who runs it, has been around the scene for much longer than that. But this is a fantastic pub. Small, perfectly formed beer list. Always really good. Evening Star is fantastic. I'll be going there later for the launch of Henry's Sunken Nave brewery, and that's great. Stumble out of the station straight into there. Again, a fantastic beer list. Huge beer list. Around this area, this is not a nice little area to do a few pubs in one crawl kind of thing. There's a lovely place called The Brick, which is run by the same people who run the Evening Star, but it's quite different. Concentrates a lot on European lagers as well as other bits and bobs. So there's a lot of places in Brighton to enjoy beer. Being a parent, I'm not out every night by any means. Most of the beer that I enjoy at home. But I love a pub. Absolutely love a pub. And as you say, we're very lucky in Brighton. There's a lot of different places. We've got some tap rooms. And just some really nice beery joints.
You can't quite get that smell of the pub at home, can you?
Exactly. No, you can't. Not unless you throw beer all up your curtains one night and don't wash them.
Or if your dog after they've been for a rainy walk, maybe.
Pour beer. Leave them. Don't dry him off. Just keep pouring water on the dog and beer up the curtains. You might get the smell.
But maybe don't recommend that. That's good. We have a dog as well, so definitely familiar with the rainy dog smell that you get in the house afterwards.
And sometimes it's like, oh no, you stink, and sometimes it's, oh, but I love you, no, you smell like a pork pie. And sometimes it's really nice,
umami.
It is. The umami of a wet dog.
That's very good.
That's a beer name, though.
That's right, you heard it here first. And what is it that you're looking for in a pub when you do come out?
So I'm not, there's a lot talked about pubs being, and I have been guilty of it probably sometimes in saying that pubs welcome everybody. They don't always. It doesn't always feel welcoming to everybody, depending on who you are. I think if you're not male, if you're not white, if you're not straight, if you're not able-bodied, I think sometimes it can be a lot harder to be accepted in pubs. So I definitely, having been, out in pubs for best part of 35 years as an adult, the first thing I look for is whether I feel safe, and that's mainly due to I'm quite an obvious lesbian, and I want to know that if I walk in somewhere I'm going to feel safe. So I look for safety first and foremost, and somewhere that I can feel comfortable to be on my own or with other people. Great beer, obviously, but even there's times in our lives where we have to go to pubs that don't have such great beer, and I'll still drink beer, I'll still drink whatever they've got. I know some people then switch to wine or switch to something else, but I don't really. I just love beer. And
it's about the people in the pub.
And it's about often about having a pint in your hand. I like the weight of a pint. I like the length of a beer as a long drink. I'll pretty much always choose beer, even if it's I think people sometimes think that beer writers don't drink mainstream beer. Well, of course we do, and I enjoy it a lot of the time. A lot of the time I enjoy well-made mainstream beer. I think it's good.
You know exactly what you're going to get.
You do. You do. Consistency, which is something you don't always get with smaller breweries. But no, I mean, I would far rather have a well-made lager than a identikit, fruity, hazy pale. God, I'm so bored of them. So bored of something that's around 4.2% hazy pale. I know that's what sells. I know it is, and that's fine. And some of them I love. Some hazy pale. I'm not saying all hazy pales I don't enjoy. Some of them I enjoy a lot, but I want them to have some kind of depth and structure. And, for example, Beak Brewery do a lot of hazy beers. I love them all. They've got some kind of, structure to them. They've got some kind of it's satisfying to drink.
It's not just the fruit juice.
No, something that is a 3 or 4% fruit juice that is produced just, I know people drink them and I know why that's why they're produced, but I think sometimes, depending on where you go, it can advertise itself as a beer bar, but actually the only choice you've got is hazy pales, and I don't think that's a choice. I don't think that's giving much of a choice to consumers when there's, a few years ago that would not have been the case.
No, that was the outlier.
Yeah. I mean, other people who do hazy pales very well in Brighton are Unbarred, and I love their beers. I know that's what sells, so I know that's what has to be produced. I'm just selfishly want something different.
Yeah, that's fair enough. But at least you have the choice with beer that you can't be too far away from something nice.
I was very lucky in Brighton, very, very lucky indeed. And Brighton and Lewis, which is only from me, it's only a walk over the hill. So very, very lucky around here. We've got some really cracking beers.
Fantastic. What would, if I had to make you pick one beer, what would your
that's
favourite
just
beer
mean,
be?
Isn't it?
Having just talked about how lovely all the beers are.
All the beers are lovely. Yeah, I'm going to pick all of them. That's really hard.
What would your next beer be? Let's say that.
Now, you see, that doesn't necessarily mean it's my favourite beer, does it? Because we're sat here of an afternoon. I know I've got something on later, so I've got to somehow pace myself. But there's also a really, really nice beer list just there. So I might pick something from that I'd never had before, and that would be my favourite beer at the moment. I suppose, gun to my head, this is the last beer I'm ever going to have.
You've made this imposition on yourself.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
You've created this world.
Created this world. Well, a couple of years ago, I co-wrote this book with there was 7 or 8 of us: Pete Brown, Claire Bullen, Roger Protz, Johnny Garrett was involved, a couple of other people, and it was the world's greatest beers. And I'm trying to think how many there were, 300, something like that. I can't remember. We had to pick about 33 beers each, something like that. And so that was a really interesting exercise in kind of trying to pick your favourite beers.
Long lists down to short lists.
And of course everyone would have a long list, and then other people had chosen from the same long list, so there had to be a bit of horse trading around. Well, you write about that one, I'll write about this one. So it really kind of focused my mind a little bit, and I suppose a few of them will always be my favourite beers. So Harvey's Imperial Double Stout, no question. I can go to Harvey's shop and buy it for for under £3 or something.
Incredible, isn't
and it's one of the greatest beers in the world. I think the most complex, one of the most complex stouts there is. Absolutely gorgeous beer. Elusive, Oregon Trail. Absolutely love that beer. I'm a sucker for bitterness. Anspach Hob Day, the porter. I suppose my favourite beer that I drink a lot, and if you asked my 11-year-old daughter what my favourite beer was, she would say it's Proper Job, because I always have Proper Job in the fridge, and we go to Cornwall quite a bit, and she knows that when we go to Cornwall, that's where I can get Proper Job on cask. That will be, get Mama Proper Job.
You're lucky to have all the St Austell breweries there as well.
Exactly. All the pubs that are there. So less regular spending. So probably if you did have a gun to my head,
which I don't. This is a podcast format, so you can imagine that if you want, but that's not what's happening.
I would have, probably I would start with something like Oregon Trail, Proper Job, and then I'd finish with the Harvey's Imperial Stout.
Fantastic.
And, and then think, damn it, I should have got the Anspach Hob Day as well.
That's right. We'll call that 4 beers. That's fine. That's a good list, though. Fantastic. So, thank you very much for having a chat with me today.
No problem.
How can people people follow you and stay up to date with everything that you're doing?
Yeah, so I still like Twitter. I know it has its drawbacks, and the number of adverts is really annoying now.
If you ever look at the comments,
never look at the comments. Yeah. But I'm still on there at the moment, and I'm at Ferment Radio. So Ferment, Ferment Radio. On Instagram, and I am on Threads actually, but I haven't actually posted anything. I'm a lurker. I'm an awkward lurker.
It's happened again.
Yeah, it's happened again. I'm at Fermentation Radio on there. Yeah, and then my website is fermentationonline.com. So, and then the podcast is same again with a question mark, and you can get that on all the podcast providers, Apple, Spotify, everywhere, or go on my website. So you get a direct link.
Cool. I'll pop a link to all of those in the show notes.
Brilliant.
Otherwise, a very big thank you for joining us and for being one of the beer people.
Oh, it's fun. Thank you. Lovely to meet you. Cheers.
So, thank you very much for listening, and I hope you can join me on the next one. And this is the part where I ask for your help. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the podcast, leave a review or rating, or share it with others. This really helps us out and helps other people find the podcast, particularly as we're starting out. And you can follow us on social media, search for We Are Beer People, all one word. You can also email us at wearebeerpeoplepod@gmail.com. Let us know what you think, share your thoughts, and if you have any recommendations for beer people you'd like to hear from. And until next time, don't forget, you, me, us, them, we are all beer people.